Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Charlottesville. My name is Mary Beth Wiley. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm pleased to be leading worship this morning with Reverend Tim Temerson and music director Scott DeVoe. This sanctuary was built over 70 years ago on the homeland of the Monacan people. It was once cared for by enslaved people from Africa and their descendants. We honor all who have dwelt here and all in our congregation whose lives led to this moment of our gathering. I invite us to take a moment to greet others. Those online may unmute and say hello, and those here in the sanctuary or social hall are welcome to greet your neighbors, especially those you do not know.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
See who else? No.
Bad today. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Morning. It's another beautiful day in the neighborhood. Oh boy, that takes me back to my children's childhood. I'm glad to see it's not raining or too hot yet, and it's just really nice outside. Very nice. It's lovely. Yeah. We've got, well, you can't really see. It's my garden.
Service in the social hall. Please feel free to use one of our red coffee mugs, which are for newcomers, and UU Charlottesville members and friends are reminded to offer a warm welcome to anyone with a red mug. We also invite you to stop by the connections table near the monitor in the social hall, where you will find all kinds of interesting information about UUCville. Seating is also available in the social hall where there's a live stream of the service. Everyone is welcome in the sanctuary, but if you need a roomier space, the social hall can be a good option. Many thanks to all our folks helping us share worship both here and online, our greeters, ushers, and hospitality and logistics team, and special thanks to our AV Tech team, Angela Orbaugh and Kim Grover, supporting the dual platform worship both online and here on Rugby Road. And now we have greetings from board member Chris Little.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. In 10 seconds, I'll say, just remind us about our congregational meeting that's coming after service and how important that is in honoring the democratic process, which is one of our core principles, and hope you will participate in that. You've heard that from many, so I'll just repeat it. But I also want to reflect back on last week and just say how moved I was by the service honoring our 3 graduates of the RE program, and just the whole community sense that we were all there in support of them and in gratitude of them and the RE program that so many contribute to. So thank you for that too, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Chris. Here are our announcements. As Chris said, at 12:30, we have a congregational meeting. It will be here in the sanctuary and online over Zoom. The agenda for the meeting includes consideration of the proposed long-range plan, approval of the annual budget, and election of new members for the Board of Trustees and Nominating Committee. You must be a member of the congregation to vote at the meeting, but all are welcome to attend and observe the democratic process in action. YRUU is holding a fundraiser for their Appalachian Service Project trip today, immediately following the service. This will be a pizza and salad combo for the low price of $5. Extra slices will sell for $3 per slice. Grab your pizza plate and then join the congregational meeting while supporting our youth in their Love in Action service trip. Parents, please register your children for the Sunday Summer Fun program, which is happening during services. This really helps us to plan for summer activities and what we need to prepare for each week. We also hope parents will register for the 24-25 year so we can plan for the RE programs that begin in the fall. You can register your children at the RE table this morning or on future Sundays. If you're interested in becoming or continuing to be an RE volunteer, teacher, mentor, or advisor, please contact Reverend Susan at susan@uucharlottesville.org. RE volunteers for this year, please stop by the RE table to receive a special thank you. Saturday, June 29th at 10 a.m. will be the National Poor People's and Low Wage Workers Assembly and Moral March on Washington, D.C. and to the polls. Anyone wishing to join the journey to Washington, D.C. can contact Reverend Susan to see about coordinating rides and other information. Excuse me. Please join us in the social hall after the service for coffee and conversation.
That is good. Thank you, Angela. By the way, before Mary Beth starts the call to worship, so Angela and Kim, who have been working with Rachel, are flying solo for the first time today. So how about that? Okay.
Our call to worship this morning comes from Stephen Schick. From the loneliness of troubled times, we come to discover that we are not alone.
Into the dwelling place of togetherness, we come to collect remnants of hope.
From fear that all is lost, we come to discover what will save us.
Into the comfort of each other's arms, we come to feel the strength that has not yet vanished.
From darkness, we come to wait until our eyes begin to see.
Into the refuge of fading dreams, we come to remove illusions and to focus on new visions.
From despair that walks alone, we come to travel together.
Into the dwelling place of generations, we come to pledge allegiance to being peace and doing justice.
As Michael Martin lights the flame of our chalice this morning, please join me in saying our unison chalice lighting words. We gather this hour as people of faith with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for truth and meaning, in celebration of the life we share together. So now we'll do the hand motions. We light this chalice to celebrate Unitarian Universalism. This is the church. This is a church of helping hands. This is a church of loving hearts. Please rise, embody your spirit, and join in singing hymn number 389, Gathered Here.
We're going to be doing this in unison, and then we're going to do it as a round. So just sorry, turn my starting pitch. Sorry. Yeah, here we go. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour, gathered here in one strong body, gathered here in the struggle and the power, Spirit, draw near. You guys start. Gathered here in the mystery of the hour. Gathered here in the body. Gathered here in repeat that of the power. Spirit, draw near. Spirit, draw near. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Very, very nice. So as I'm sure some of you are aware, June is Pride Month. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. A time when we are especially intentional about celebrating the LGBTQ plus community, all the beauty and joy of that community, and especially remind ourselves in this congregation how essential it is that we live our faith and live our mission to be a place of love and welcome for all. So I would like to share with you a wonderful blessing. It's called a rainbow blessing. It's written by Cricket Hall, who's a Unitarian Universalist. I think a Unitarian Universalist minister. So this is more of a kind of an affirmation rather than a prayer or meditation, but I think it's pretty cool. So Rainbow Blessing by Cricket Hall. May the drag stage rise to meet you. May the world rise to accept and embrace you. May the rainbow of love enfold you. May your fluidity never be hindered. May your pronouns always be supported and your dead name forgotten. May those you invite into your life remain loyal. May your chosen family lift you up and catch you when you need it. May you be able to catch others when they need it. May you remember sensitivity is not weakness, but instead a great strength welling up inside of you. And may you always, always remember that you are loved and you are divine. Can I get an amen for that? Amen. Absolutely. Cricket Hall, Rainbow Blessing. Friends, we are an interconnected community that cares for one another. Part of how we embody this care is by making time each week to share the joys and sorrows we hold in our hearts. As is our practice, you are now invited to come forward and place a glass stone in a communal bowl of water as a symbolic act of each being held by the larger love that holds us all. Those online may type their joys or sorrows into the chat. And please know that this ritual is for everyone. If you have come through our doors for the first time today, you are welcome to participate as you are so moved. Ellen Longmore from our pastoral care team will also come forward to help hold the space. Ellen will be available for a few minutes after the service in the back corner of the sanctuary there if you are in need of pastoral support, or maybe today you just need someone to listen. Those joining us online can contact the pastoral care team at pastoral@uucharlottesville.org. And now let us begin our ritual of joys and sorrows.
This community offers its love and support to what is closest to our hearts. Another way we show our care for one another is in sharing our financial gifts with our community and our congregation. Our social action collection for the month of June is Partner for Mental Health, whose mission is to help people experiencing mental illness and substance use disorder in the greater Charlottesville area live self-directed lives in their home communities. Partner for Mental Health provides intensive, flexible, and comprehensive assistance to assist people living with mental illness meet their recovery goals. You've already got it up there. Thanks, Angela and Kim. In addition to giving online, if you would like to give today with cash or check, please use the social action collection envelopes here in the sanctuary and place your offering in the collection plate. Along with our social action collection each week, we invite everyone into the spiritual practice of generosity by giving to the ministry of our congregation. Through your pledges and with the weekly Sunday morning offering, together our financial gifts sustain and support our congregation. This is our shared ministry. During the music that follows, you may choose to make your Sunday morning offering by using the text address or going to our website. Here in the sanctuary, you may place cash or checks in the collection plates as they are passed. Let us now dedicate all of the many gifts we share with one another by saying, with your gifts with gratitude, may we use them wisely for the highest good.
The reading I'm about to share with you is an excerpt from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s letter from Birmingham jail. This particular passage, for those of you who are not familiar with the context of the letter, Dr. King had been imprisoned in Birmingham during the nonviolent campaign in Birmingham after the authorities in Birmingham had turned dogs and fire hoses on children. And Dr. King wrote this letter in response to an article that had been written by some liberal, moderate white pastors urging the movement to stop, that this was not the right time, that this kind of troublemaking would make things worse. So Dr. King, while sitting in his prison cell, wrote this: "The contemporary church is often a weak, ineffectual voice with an uncertain sound. In the midst of blatant injustices, I have watched churches stand on the sideline and merely mouth pious irrelevancies and sanctimonious trivialities. More often than not, the church is an arch supporter of the status quo. Far from being disturbed by the presence of the church, the power structure is consoled by the church's silent and often vocal sanction of things as they are. So the great question is this: is organized religion too inextricably bound to the status quo to save our nation and the world? Will the contemporary church be a strong ally for justice, or will it remain silent behind the anesthetizing security of stained glass windows?" Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., letter from Birmingham jail. So before I start my sermon, I just want to say that that particular passage has resided at the center of my spiritual life, and especially my ministry as a Unitarian Universalist minister ever since I encountered it. The question at the end: will the church be a strong ally for justice or remain silent behind the security of stained glass windows? That question challenges me, inspires me, and at those times when I quite frankly have remained silent, it haunts me. And so I just wanted to say and acknowledge that that these words right here to me are always raising questions and raising a challenge that all congregations, but especially a congregation like this one, should be reflecting on and responding to. So let me begin. April the 7th, 1943. A young Lutheran minister is arrested and imprisoned in Berlin on suspicion of being connected to a plot to assassinate Adolf Hitler. He is an accomplished preacher and teacher, theologian, and writer. Since the Nazi Party's rise to power 10 years earlier, he has tirelessly sought to convince his fellow Christians to actively resist the fascist regime and especially persecution of the Jews. Unfortunately, his courageous words and actions are, for the most part, unheeded, as the vast majority of German churches actively support or remain silent about the Nazi regime and its actions. This young minister eventually joins the organized resistance movement, which leads to his arrest and imprisonment in April of 1943, and 2 years later, he is tragically executed at the young age of 39. Fast forward 20 years, April the 16th, 1963. Another minister sits in a narrow jail cell in Birmingham, Alabama. Over the past 8 years, he has led a nonviolent resistance movement seeking to end racial segregation across the American South. He is also an accomplished preacher and writer, and a few months after his release from jail, he will deliver what is perhaps the greatest speech in the history of this country. After being released from that jail cell and delivering that famous speech, the young minister leads the civil rights movement for another 5 years until he is tragically assassinated, also at the young age of 39. Now, although coming from very different backgrounds and having very different life experiences, the journeys of the German pastor Dietrich Bonhoeffer and the African-American civil rights leader Martin Luther King Jr. share a great deal in common. They were both Christian ministers, scholars, and activists. They were both thrust into the leadership of movements that opposed powerful forces rooted in hate, oppression, and violence. And they both articulated and courageously acted on a vision of religion and religious community that demanded resistance to an unjust status quo, rather than the passivity that so often characterizes religious communities who, unfortunately, tend to prefer to remain silent behind those stained glass windows. Now, resistance, this idea of resistance, is certainly a word one has heard a great deal in Unitarian Universalism over the last decade. I don't think I'm going out on an interpretive limb here to suggest that the results of the 2016 election galvanized many in our faith to oppose and challenge actions and policies that harmed so many and that continue to threaten the future of democracy. And with another election looming in the fall that may prove to be the most consequential in the history of this nation, I'm imagining that resistance will once again move to the forefront of Unitarian Universalism. So I want to take a few minutes this morning to explore with you the idea of resistance and to ask what exactly it means for a religious community to resist. Is resistance a product of the results of the latest election or the party affiliation of the current administration? Or is there something deeper in the fabric of Unitarian Universalism that is always calling us to resist and transform the status quo, no matter who occupies the Oval Office or what political party has a majority in Congress or the state legislature or the governor's mansion? And answering that question takes us back well before 2016, really all the way back to the beginnings of Unitarian Universalism almost 500 years ago. Let's think for a moment about how this tradition of ours got started. Many of you know, of course, that we started out as two traditions, Unitarianism and Universalism. Unitarianism emerged out of an argument, a theological dispute that within Christianity at the time about the nature of God, a dispute that led Unitarians to affirm the unity, that's where the name comes from, or the oneness of God. That affirmation provoked a pretty significant backlash, and some of our Unitarian forebears were branded as heretics, and some were killed and imprisoned for their beliefs. And I think it was that experience of religiously inspired oppression and even violence that led the Unitarian side of our tradition to embrace values like freedom, reason, and tolerance at its core, and to resist efforts to deny those rights, not only to Unitarians, but to all people. The Universalists began in a somewhat similar fashion. They rejected the theology of Calvinism, which saw God as a harsh judge who divides the human family into the saved and the unsaved. The Universalists saw, on the other hand, God as a loving parent who welcomes and saves all people, no matter who they are, where they come from, or what they believe. This led the Universalists to embrace unconditional love as their core religious value, a love that knows no bounds and that belongs to the whole human family. While both the Unitarians and the Universalists could have chosen to remain primarily inwardly focused, and there were certainly times when they did, from the beginning, Unitarian Universalism has never been simply about us and what goes on in congregations like this. Not that we have sought to proselytize or to insist that everyone should be a Unitarian Universalist. In fact, just the opposite has been the case. With few exceptions, Unitarian Universalism has always celebrated religious pluralism and freedom of conscience and has resisted efforts to impose one dogma or creed on society as a whole. But our commitments to religious freedom and unconditional love have not been simply pious words leading us to be passive in the face of injustice or to remain silent behind the safety of stained glass windows. Think for a moment about the Unitarians and Universalists who resisted slavery, who struggled for the rights of women, who stood courageously against war and capital punishment, who risked their lives to help liberate victims of Nazi persecution and genocide during the Second World War, and who marched for civil rights and marriage equality. In one critical moment after another, Unitarian Universalists have answered the call to struggle for a more just and peaceful world. So I think there is little doubt that this idea of resistance is indeed built into the very fabric of Unitarian Universalism, that we find ourselves living in one of those critical moments when we must put our values into action. Speaking for myself, I can't remember a time when our country felt so divided and when hate and fear and exclusion have seemed to play such a prominent role in public life. And as is so often the case, that hatred and exclusion are most often directed at those who are marginalized by society. People of color, women, immigrants, religious minorities, the LGBTQ community, and so many others. But as Dr. King, Bonhoeffer, and so many of our Unitarian Universalist forebears have made clear, in times like these, people of faith have a religious and moral responsibility to say enough. We have a responsibility to resist those voices calling us to hate our neighbor rather than loving and welcoming them. We have a responsibility to resist those voices calling us to care only about ourselves and our own privilege while ignoring the oppression and suffering of others. And we most certainly have a responsibility to resist those voices calling us to let bitterness and resentment be our guides rather than love and compassion. So what does resistance look like in a congregation like the Unitarian Universalist congregation of Charlottesville? Well, first and foremost, I think resistance means that we must always be a community that strives to be, as our mission says so well, a safe and welcoming place for all. In a world in which so many are being told that who they are is unacceptable and even illegal, that their lives and their voices don't matter, and that past and present injustices need to be erased from history rather than acknowledged and addressed, congregations like this one must live our Unitarian Universalist values every day and in everything we do. Now, while resistance often takes the form of what one might call social activism, our congregation must also resist by being a place of healing and hope, pluralism and diversity, exploration and curiosity. Again, we live in a world that feels so often like it's going in the wrong direction, that feels so filled with hate and exclusion and stress and anxiety. I, for one, can tell you how easy it is for me to get dragged down by all the toxic and hurtful things that fill our political climate, sometimes our religious climate. I oftentimes find myself getting angry by what others are saying and feeling stressed out and anxious. Sometimes even taking that stress and anxiety out on others who are just being who they are. And it's just so unhealthy and so toxic. I struggle on a daily basis as well. And I sometimes find myself with all this toxicity, just wanting to bury my head in the sand. Don't talk about politics. Don't think about it. Just try to go like this. And I think those tendencies to let our own selves, our own best selves, be dragged down by toxic culture is why that's one of the most important reasons why a congregation like this one can resist by always being a community where mind, heart, body, and spirit can find healing, rest, and renewal. In the struggle to resist, we can easily lose sight of just how important it is to attend to our own well-being and to create spaces for peace and silence, spirit and wholeness. If people of goodwill are to resist what's going on out there, we must give ourselves permission to find peace and joy in here and in here. And finally, we must answer Dietrich Bonhoeffer and Martin Luther King Jr.'s call by having the courage to move beyond these walls to resist an unjust status quo. That kind of resistance isn't easy, and it can be risky and even harmful, as the residents of Charlottesville well know from the acts of violence and, yes, terrorism that visited our city in 2017. But resistance most certainly requires that we take risks, act boldly, and challenge injustice. As Dr. King said, there are times when communities of faith and conscience must oppose injustice, which he defined as those structures and policies that degrade and damage human personality and human dignity. In similar fashion, Bonhoeffer argued that organized religion is required not simply to offer comfort to the victims of injustice, but also, in his powerful words, when the wheels of injustice are turning faster and faster, sometimes organized religion needs to, as he said it, jam a spoke in the wheel of power and domination by actively defying those forces perpetuating it. Now, at this point, I can imagine some of you may be thinking that this whole resistance business sounds pretty stressful and uncomfortable, and it can be. But I want to say that in my experience, and in the experience of many Unitarian Universalists who have lived their faith by challenging injustice and by following a courageous path of love and compassion, there is something about resistance, something about speaking up and speaking out and showing up that enriches one's own life and renews one's sense of purpose and meaning. I think back, for example, to the Unitarian Universalists who answered Dr. King's call to come to Selma in 1965 to march for voting rights, including, I might add, the minister of this congregation, Roy Jones. While fear and danger were certainly prevalent, according to Mark Morrison Reed, one of our best Unitarian Universalist historians, according to his wonderful book on Selma, in the aftermath, many of the UUs who went to Selma looked back on their experience as the high point of their lives and as a time when they truly felt they were living their Unitarian Universalist values and principles. To borrow a lovely phrase from the great Quaker writer Parker Palmer, resistance can be a moment when, as Palmer says, soul and role come into alignment and are in harmony with one another. And resistance is not all about being on the front lines or devoting all of one's time to social activism. Resistance is about truly living one's faith, or as we might say in Unitarian Universalism, living into the fullness of one's UU values. In a world in which language and behavior grow increasingly toxic and divisive, resistance is indeed about creating space for beauty, joy, and healing. In a world that is so often characterized by my way or the highway, or us versus them, resistance is about living every day with humility, deep listening, and openness. And in a world that continues to try and pretend that oppression and the climate crisis are fake news or part of some woke ideology, resistance means courageously telling the truth and speaking honestly about ourselves, about our values and principles, and about a vision of a world of equity, justice, and peace for all people and for the planet, which our current mission says so well. Now, as you heard earlier, in a few minutes, we will gather here in the sanctuary and online for our congregational meeting. And one of the key items on the agenda is approval of our long-range plan, whose purpose is to enable us to live our mission. I am so proud of the hard work that has gone into developing this plan. The task force has spent the last 6 months listening and learning and has done a wonderful job, and so many of you contributed your ideas and your input. Let me simply say that I believe this plan that you will be voting on in a few minutes will provide our congregation with the goals, the focus, and the accountability we will need to live our mission and to put our congregation's soul in harmony with our role and our mission. Together, we can and we must put love into action and be a community of healing and hope, not only for ourselves, but for all people and for the planet. Friends, I cannot wait to begin this journey with all of you, because together we can resist with joy and make such a positive difference. Amen, and blessed be. Thank you. Now I invite you to rise in body or spirit. Let's join in singing our closing hymn. It's a good upbeat piece, number 1017, Building a New Way. Please rise.
We are building
So before I deliver the benediction, just a reminder, of course, that, hey, look at that. I got it in before, I finished before noon. So there's lots of time to go get pizza and salad and sit down and have something to eat. And then we'll be reconvening here in the sanctuary at 12:30. Those of you online, of course, please do join us online for the congregational meeting, again, which will begin at 12:30. For my closing words today, I want to share these from my colleague, Ellen Johnson Fay. Do justly this day and every day. Be of good will. Journey humbly before the mysteries of life and before the gulf which separates us from the ideals we profess. Live in peace and praise. Our day is just beginning, so may it be. Yes, indeed. Friends, be well, take very good care of yourselves, of each other, and of the world. Every day, just try to decompress a little, relax a little, take a few minutes so that together we can live our values and make a positive difference in the world. We are on the path. Amen. Blessed be. I don't know, should I say go in pizza? Go in peace. Oh, okay.